When State Attorney Danielle Rivers faced an unwarranted traffic stop, she maintained her composure. However, what her dash camera and a subsequent whistleblower divulged sent shockwaves through the entire city. At precisely 8:46 p.m., Danielle Rivers carefully maneuvered her black Audi into the left turn lane at the junction of Appalachia Parkway and Magnolia Drive. She was en route to her residence following an extended meeting at the state attorney's downtown office. It had been a demanding Thursday, unremarkable in itself, involving a pile of case evaluations and a spirited debate with a junior prosecutor concerning concealed evidence. She lowered the radio's volume to a soft hum and drummed her fingers on the steering wheel, awaiting the light's change. Her gaze drifted to the rearview mirror. A marked police cruiser had pulled in directly behind her. No big deal, she mused. This occurrence wasn't uncommon. Officers frequently checked license plates at intersections, even randomly. The light shifted to green. Danielle executed her left turn, the patrol car maintaining close proximity. As she passed the next block, she observed the blue lights illuminating her mirror. She blinked, then verified her speed, 20.8. What the? The speed limit was 30. No signal missed, no lapsed registration. She hadn't even touched her phone. She steered into the parking lot of a closed convenience store, shifted her car into park and waited. A quiet exhalation escaped her lips. Then came the distinct crunch of gravel underfoot. 2 officers approached. One positioned himself slightly behind her rear passenger door, while the other, a younger white officer with short blonde hair and flushed cheeks, advanced to her driver's side window. Danielle slowly lowered the window. Her voice was steady, assertive. "Good evening, officer. Could you please inform me why I'm being detained?" The officer did not immediately respond. His eyes flickered towards the second officer, then back to her. "License and registration, please." She remained still for a moment. "I'll retrieve those for you," she stated evenly, "but I'd like to understand the reason for this stop." Again, no reply. The second officer adjusted his stance, hands resting on his belt, gaze unwavering. Danielle slowly exhaled and reached for the glove compartment. Her movements were deliberate, calm, measured, and clearly visible. She presented her license. The blonde officer glanced at it, then back at her face. We ran your plate and it came back flagged," he mumbled. "Flagged for what?" she inquired. There was a pause. He licked his lips. "We're still verifying that." Danielle's voice sharpened just perceptibly. "So, you're unaware why my car was flagged, yet you proceeded to pull me over?" Neither officer offered a response. Internally, she felt the pulse in her throat, not fear but something else. A tight knot of anger entwined with disbelief. She looked back at the officer. "You understand I've committed no infraction. I wasn't speeding, my tags are current. So, unless you're detaining me for a specific reason." He interrupted her. "We're just performing our duty." She regarded him for a prolonged moment, then without uttering another word, reached back into the glove box, produced a second form of identification and held it up. State of Florida, Office of the State Attorney, her name elegantly embossed in silver letters. The officer blinked. He leaned closer, then stiffened. "Oh," he uttered. Behind her, the second officer stepped nearer. "Ma'am, we didn't recognize you." Danielle's eyebrows arched. "I wasn't aware that should be relevant." A prolonged silence ensued. "We apologize for the misunderstanding," the first officer stated. "There's sometimes a system discrepancy and when tags are flagged." She raised her hand. "I've heard enough." The officer returned her license and retreated. "You're free to go." She offered no thank you. Nor did she immediately depart. She remained motionless for several seconds, engine idling, allowing the entire incident to sink in. As the patrol car drove away, she retrieved her phone, activated the voice memo application and quietly spoke. "Thursday, August 1st. Traffic stop. No cause provided." She paused, then added, "I'm accustomed to being questioned in court. Tonight I posed a question on the street and they lacked an answer." But the narrative did not conclude in that parking lot. It was merely commencing. The following morning, Danielle Rivers sat at her kitchen counter, black coffee in hand, gazing at her phone. She had mentally replayed the traffic stop a dozen times before sunrise. She had barely slept, not due to fear, but because an element of the encounter persistently defied her reasoning. the absence of explanation, the hesitancy, the officer's reaction upon seeing her credentials. Her mother, Carmen Rivers, entered, clad in her soft green robe, hair wrapped in a scarf. "You're up early," Carmen remarked, reaching for the kettle. Danielle nodded, her eyes still fixed on her phone. "Are you all right?" Danielle did not immediately reply. Then she said, "They stopped me last night. 2 officers. No reason." Carmen slowly turned. "What do you mean, no reason?" "They alleged my tags were flagged, then admitted they didn't actually know why." Carmen's hand hovered over the kettle, unmoving, her gaze sharpening. "They didn't recognize you?" Danielle looked up. "Not until I informed them who I was." A long silence followed. Carmen sat down opposite her. "You need to report that." "I did," Danielle said, raising her phone. "To myself. Voice memo. I've also already filed the dashcam request." A moment of silence stretched between them, a dense, knowing quiet. The kind that exists only between women who have lived long enough to cease being surprised, even when disappointed. "You know what this is," Carmen finally stated. "I do." Later that day, Danielle arrived at her office, dressed in her customary gray pantsuit and low heels. Her assistant, Nadia, greeted her at the door with a hesitant expression. "Hey, I saw your post," Nadia said, walking beside her down the hallway. Danielle glanced sideways. "It's already up?" "It's being shared everywhere. Over 2,000 reposts in under 3 hours. People are discussing it." Danielle sighed. That was quick. She opened her office door and stepped inside. The room was unpretentious. No mahogany desk, no costly art, just a wall of case files, a framed law degree, and a small photograph of her and her mother in front of a courtroom. On her desk lay a manila envelope stamped Public Records Division TPD, the dash cam footage. She opened it and inserted the USB into her laptop. The screen illuminated with grainy night footage. Her car, the flashing lights, the approaching officers. She pressed play. It was all there. Clear audio, no probable cause mentioned, just vague conversation between the 2 officers about checking her out. Danielle leaned in, observing intently. At the 2-minute mark, the officer mumbled, "This plate's clean, but let's ask her anyway. Maybe she's hiding something." Danielle paused the video. She stared at the screen, lips tightly pressed. She picked up her phone and dialed an old contact. Journalist Theo Whitman from the Tallahassee Tribune. Someone who never shied away from truth, regardless of its implications. Theo answered on the second ring. "Danielle, I was just about to call you. Your tweet flooded my inbox." "I've got dashcam footage," she stated plainly. "You want it? Does it reveal what I suspect it does?" "Worse." There was a pause on the line. "I'll be there in 10." 10 minutes later, Theo entered her office, camera bag slung over one shoulder, and his familiar worn press badge clipped to his jacket. He possessed the kind of face that compelled people to confide in him. Honest, subtly lined, with weary yet observant eyes. Danielle handed him the file. "This is off record for now." Theo nodded. "Understood." He watched silently as the footage played. When it concluded, he slowly leaned back. "That's a problem," he commented. Danielle did not respond. Theo closed the laptop. "You want to make this public?" "I want to understand what kind of system permits this to happen to me. Because if it happens to me..." Theo completed her sentence for her. "Then it's certainly happening to people without a badge." She nodded. "Exactly." But what neither of them realized was that the department was already formulating its own account of the incident, and it diverged from the footage. It was Friday afternoon when the Tallahassee Police Department released their official statement. Brief, ambiguous, 2 paragraphs. They characterized the stop as standard procedure, attributing it to a technical discrepancy in the vehicle's plate registration that had triggered an automated alert. There was no mention of the officer's failure to explain the stop, no reference to the dashcam audio, no accountability. Danielle stood in her office as Nadia handed her a printed copy. Her lips slightly parted as she read. "They're dismissing it," Danielle muttered, as if it were insignificant. Nadia remained silent, simply standing nearby, observing Danielle. Danielle took a deep breath and reopened her laptop. She queued up the footage and replayed the moment the officer remarked, "Maybe she's hiding something." Her stomach churned. She minimized the video window and accessed her email. In the subject line she typed to whom it should concern, but she stopped. She didn't want to dispatch a statement to the department, not yet. She desired the public to witness what she had seen, unedited. That night, from her living room couch, Danielle uploaded a 54-second clip from the dash cam to her verified social media account. No commentary, no caption, just the video. Within an hour, it had amassed 80,000 views. By morning it had surpassed 500,000. The comment sections erupted. Some users expressed shock, others anger, some commended Danielle's composure, others posed the same chilling query. If they did this to a state attorney, what would they do to me? Meanwhile, across town at precinct headquarters, Officer Blake Denton, the blonde officer from the stop, sat opposite Internal Affairs investigator Joyce Linwood. His posture was rigid, mouth tight. Joyce clicked her pen and leaned forward. "Walk me through it again." Denton cleared his throat. "We were patrolling near Magnolia, saw the Audi turn. I ran the plate. System flagged it." Joyce raised an eyebrow. "For what reason?" He hesitated. I don't know. It just came up flagged." Joyce opened a folder. "The database indicates no active flags on that vehicle. Tags are current. No alerts." Denton glanced down. "Then the system must have malfunctioned." She let that thought linger for a moment. Then she continued, "Did you or your partner explain to the driver why she was being stopped?" "Not immediately. We weren't sure at first." Joyce leaned back in her chair. "Officer Denton, were you aware that the woman you pulled over was the sitting state attorney?" He shook his head rapidly. "Not until she showed us her ID." She gave him a stern look. "Do you comprehend why this is an issue?" He nodded barely. "And now that the footage is public, it's everyone's problem." Across town, Theo Whitman was inundated with calls. Local news outlets sought interviews, morning shows, even a syndicated crime podcast host from Seattle. He called Danielle. "People are already constructing their own narrative," he said. "Let them," she replied, "because mine's not a narrative, it's a record." "Are you certain you wish to continue pursuing this?" he inquired. "They'll push back." Danielle gazed out the window. Children were playing basketball down the street. It was a humid afternoon, the kind where everything felt slightly heavier. She said, "Theo, this isn't solely about me. If I allow it to go unnoticed, I'm conveying to every public defender who enters my courtroom that silence is the secure path, and I don't subscribe to that belief." Theo sighed. "All right then. We go all in." That Sunday she agreed to a sit-down interview with Theo at his modest studio near the FAMU campus. The room was unadorned, bare walls, one microphone, 2 chairs. Danielle wore a simple blue blouse, hair pulled back, no makeup, just her and the unvarnished truth. Theo leaned forward. "When did you realize this was not a routine stop?" Danielle looked into the camera. "When the officer couldn't answer a fundamental question, why am I being pulled over? That's when I understood something was amiss." She paused. "I've prosecuted genuine criminals. I've reviewed body camera footage where stops spiraled out of control, and I consistently inquire about the trigger because how it commences dictates how it concludes. If it begins in silence, it typically concludes in trouble." But the interview wouldn't merely go viral. It would compel the department to act more swiftly than they had intended. By Monday morning, the clip had exceeded 2 million views. Danielle Rivers's name was now trending on social media alongside hashtags such as #PulledOverWhileBlack and #StateAttorneyStopped. Her interview with Theo had been picked up by a dozen regional stations and 2 national outlets. It was no longer just a local narrative. It had gained momentum, surged beyond city limits and permeated homes across the nation. However, with widespread visibility came opposition. Danielle sat at her desk, scrolling through the comments. Some were supportive. Lawyers, activists, teachers, even a retired judge from Missouri who lauded her as a rare kind of brave. But the vitriol arrived with equal force. "Stop making everything about race. This was a routine stop. You're just using your title to play victim." Another entitled bureaucrat crying wolf. Nadia stepped in holding a folder and a bottle of water. "You should stop reading those." Danielle didn't look up. "I've endured worse in cross-examinations." "Yeah, but those individuals were facing prison time. These folks are just angry in sweatpants." That elicited a chuckle from Danielle, even if fleetingly. She closed the laptop. "What's in the folder?" Nadia handed it to her. Request for interview. Miami Herald, Tampa Bay Tribune and MSNBC. Danielle slowly shook her head. Not yet. Let the story unfold naturally. But the story wasn't waiting for her. That afternoon, Chief Ronald Breck held a brief press conference outside TPD headquarters, flanked by city officials. He read from a prepared statement. We are taking this matter seriously. An internal review is underway. We acknowledge that communication during the stop could have been clearer. However, at this time we have found no evidence of misconduct. The questions came rapidly. Have the officers been placed on leave? Was the traffic stop racially motivated? Why does the footage contradict your report? Chief Breck provided mechanical answers. It's under review. We are cooperating. We are committed to transparency. But people weren't convinced. In the comments section beneath the live stream, the anger intensified. Later that night, Theo sent Danielle a text. Theo, you need to see this. Sending now. A few seconds later, a clip arrived. Unedited, shaky cell phone video shot from a car parked across the street during the traffic stop. The video captured something the dash cam missed. It showed the second officer, off-screen in the dash cam, mimicking Danielle's voice in a mocking tone as he walked back to the patrol car. It was quick, subtle, but unmistakable. Danielle played it 3 times, each time slower. That officer had laughed. She stared at the screen, then hit save. The phone rang. It was Carmen. Baby, I saw the new footage. Are you okay? Danielle stood by her window, gazing out into the quiet of the neighborhood. I'm fine. Just tired. Her mother's voice came through firm. No, you're not fine. This is exhausting and it should be. They don't get to belittle you then seek refuge behind a badge. Danielle didn't answer. Carmen waited, then gently added, You've dedicated your entire life to upholding the law. Now the law needs to answer to you. The next day, Theo published a new article with the headline, Beyond the Dash Cam, What the Public Wasn't Supposed to See. The body camera request had still not been satisfied, but more individuals were coming forward. Drivers who had experienced similar stops, some who had filed complaints years ago that yielded no results. One of them, a school counselor named Marcus Edens from Wakulla County, contacted Theo. They pulled me over last year, he recounted, said I ran a red light that never existed. I filed a report. Nothing transpired. Another was a single mother named Brianna Lofton, who had been pulled over on her way to work at 5 a.m. Same story, she asserted, no reason, just a random check. The pressure on TPD began to escalate, but it wasn't solely external. Within the department, some officers had begun anonymously whispering to reporters. Tensions were mounting between the rank and file and leadership. Morale was low, rumors were circulating. And Danielle? She continued reporting to work, reviewing cases, attending hearings, allowing her silence to convey what words could not, until something else emerged. But what no one anticipated was for the body camera footage to finally be released, exacerbating the situation. Before she became the state attorney for Florida's 2nd Judicial Circuit, Danielle Rivers was simply a girl growing up in Quincy, a small town 30 minutes west of Tallahassee. Her mother, Carmen, worked nights at the hospital. Her father, Clarence, had been a math teacher at the local high school until a sudden stroke claimed him before Danielle turned 9. That's when Danielle transformed. She became less talkative in class, began voraciously reading everything she could find. The local librarian, Mrs. Beecham, would often set aside thick tomes of case law and biographies of old civil rights attorneys specifically for her. At 12, she witnessed her cousin's arrest in front of his house for what the deputy termed loitering suspiciously. He had merely been sitting on the porch with a Sprite. She remembered her uncle's cries, her aunt's tears, her cousin's silence, as if he had already foreseen this outcome. Danielle never forgot it. By the time she was 17, she was organizing free legal clinics in the church basement. At 23, she strode across the stage at Howard Law, second in her class. Her professors used to refer to her as the scalpel. Not because she was boisterous, but because she was incisive. She returned to Florida devoid of illusions. Danielle never aspired to celebrity. She aimed to be a surgeon of words, dissecting flawed systems, holding them accountable with evidence, not volume. Her inaugural high-profile case was against a local officer accused of manufacturing drug charges against black teenagers in Leon County. She led the prosecution. A conviction was secured. But she didn't celebrate. Justice isn't a finish line, she told a local paper at the time. It's a moving target. You keep pursuing it. That quotation found its way onto posters in local schools. She disliked the attention, but Carmen had framed one of the clippings anyway and placed it on her dresser. Now seated in her office, Danielle surveyed that same article on her screen, shaking her head at how different things appeared in retrospect. She closed the tab and walked to the window. Outside, traffic flowed as usual. People hurried to lunch breaks, errands, meetings. The world continued its rotation. Nadia knocked lightly and entered. "You have a call. A woman named Rhonda Ellis says she was on the Tallahassee Human Rights Commission with you years ago." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Put her through." The phone clicked. "Danielle, it's Rhonda." "Hey, it's been a while." Rhonda wasted no time. "Listen, I know you're enduring immense difficulty right now, but I wanted you to hear this from me." Danielle's voice lowered. "What is it?" "I just received word through the grapevine. TPD's union is preparing legal action. They're attempting to assert the stop was justified based on elevated threats against public officials and random surveillance protocol." Danielle straightened. "That's not protocol. That's fabrication." "I know, but they're banking on confusion. They believe if they generate enough noise, people will lose interest." Danielle tightened her jaw. "They're mistaken." Rhonda paused. "Are you certain you want to persist in this fight? I mean, you could remain quiet, stay safe. No one would fault you." Danielle's voice was steady. "That's the issue. Too many people no longer condemn silence. They anticipate it." That night back home, Danielle sat in the den with Carmen. No television, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft creak of the old floorboards beneath their chairs. Carmen poured 2 glasses of sweet tea and slid one over. "You're making people uneasy," she said, not looking up. Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Good." Carmen chuckled quietly. "I didn't raise you to be compliant when the regulations are being rewritten in real time." Danielle took a sip. "You raised me to perceive clearly. That's what I'm striving to do." Carmen reached for her hand. "Then don't falter." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't require filling, merely sharing. But while Danielle remained resolute, the department was preparing to release footage they hoped would quash the story. What they didn't know was it would achieve the opposite. The body camera footage was released on a Wednesday afternoon, discreetly. No press conference, no media alert, just a link dropped on the department's website, nestled under the heading Supplemental Transparency Materials. But the internet possesses a knack for swift discovery. Within the first hour, someone had already clipped the crucial segment and uploaded it to multiple platforms. The sound quality was decent, the image shaky but distinct. It depicted Officer Denton walking back toward the patrol car, muttering to his partner, "She's probably one of those, 'Do you know who I am?' types." He laughed. Then his partner, Officer Casey Drew, uttered something that had not been included in the initial dashcam recording. "She fits the profile." Those 4 words, that was all it took. The clip spread like wildfire. Reporters reposted it. Lawyers reacted to it. Students, activists, teachers, people from every background began demanding action. The city's inaction no longer seemed like prudence. It felt like cowardice. Danielle sat in her office, earbuds in, watching the footage with Theo standing across from her. He did not speak, he didn't need to. She slowly removed the earbuds. Her face was unreadable. "Fits the profile," she repeated. They didn't even attempt to conceal it. Theo spoke cautiously. "They thought they'd escape with it, that no one would scrutinize this closely." "They were right," she asserted. "If I hadn't possessed my title, I'd merely be another complaint lost in a drawer at City Hall." The pressure on the mayor was escalating. Protesters had begun to assemble outside. Local clergy, teachers, neighborhood organizers, not in the thousands but consistently loudly enough to be heard. That evening, Mayor Calvin Rhodes convened a closed-door meeting with Chief Breck and the city council. "I need this resolved," he stated bluntly, fingers interlocked over the conference table. Chief Breck appeared uncomfortable. "We're conducting a comprehensive review." "You've had 6 days," the mayor retorted. "The public witnessed the footage. You heard what the officer said. If this isn't clear to you yet, perhaps you are the issue." City Council member Marissa Glenn interjected, "We're now facing a liability concern." If she sues, she has grounds. The body cam is a disaster. Breck attempted to defend his officers, but his words rang hollow. We don't want to make hasty decisions that harm department morale. Calvin interrupted him. You're concerned about morale? I'm concerned about a flawed system. The next day, both officers were placed on administrative leave. It wasn't a suspension, nor was it a termination, but it represented the first official consequence. Danielle learned about it not through the city, but via a headline. She stared at the phone, lips tightly pressed. That afternoon, Carmen arrived at the office unannounced, carrying a small bag of food. Pulled pork sliders. Made too many. Figured you hadn't eaten. Danielle faintly smiled. You know me too well. They sat in the break room away from the press calls and legal emails, just mother and daughter quietly eating. You heard about the leave? Carmen inquired between bites. I did. Does that feel like justice? Danielle considered it. No, but it feels like they're squirming, and that indicates they know they're wrong. Carmen wiped her hands. So what now? Danielle gazed out the window. How I persevere. That night her phone vibrated again. A voicemail. This one from a woman named Isabel Marie, a young, new Hispanic officer in the department, her voice nervous. Hi Ms. Rivers, you don't know me, but I've witnessed things. I can't speak openly, not yet, but the truth matters. You're not alone in this. I have something you should hear. Danielle replayed it. Same words, same tremor in the voice. She saved the number. The next morning she returned the call. Isabel answered almost immediately. She spoke quietly, almost in a whisper. I have access to internal audio logs. What they said before they even pulled you over. It's worse than what's public. Danielle's voice was calm. Can you send it? I will, but please protect me. Danielle paused. You have my word. But what Isabel sent would entirely shift the discourse and compel people to confront the unsettling aspect of policing that seldom moves beyond the flashing red and blue lights. The audio file Isabel Marie dispatched arrived late that night. Danielle opened the message on her laptop, seated in the quiet of her living room. She wore a loose hoodie and leggings, hair pulled up, face unadorned. It had been an exhausting week. Her inbox was a battleground, her voicemail full, and now she had this. The file was only 2 minutes long. Danielle pressed play. It commenced with routine radio chatter, then a laughing voice cut through. Let's run that one. Looks like someone's heading out of their tax bracket. The next voice, Denton's. Bet she's headed home from court feeling all important. Then Drew, watch her try to lecture us. These types always do. Got that smug look like they're the exception. Danielle sat perfectly still. Then the clincher. She's black, wearing a suit, driving an Audi. That's bingo. He paused the audio. She didn't rewind, didn't listen again. He closed the laptop. Then she stared at the ceiling, allowing the silence to deepen until it felt like an oppressive weight. She had heard cruel remarks before. Slurs whispered in courthouse elevators, assumptions muttered under breath in back rooms, phrases like overqualified used as code. But this was different. This wasn't whispered. It was systemic, casual, unchallenged. The next morning, Danielle stood in her bathroom mirror, applying a light coat of foundation. She observed herself closely. Her eyes appeared more fatigued than usual. Not broken, just worn down from internalizing everything. She proceeded to the kitchen. Carmen was already there, stirring scrambled eggs. The radio played softly in the background. Did you get any sleep? Her mother asked without turning around. Danielle shook her head, pouring coffee. Not much. Carmen looked over. That woman, the officer, the one who sent you the file, do you trust her? She didn't have to reach out. Carmen served the eggs and sat down. So what will you do with it? Danielle did not immediately respond. She sipped her coffee. Her hands trembled slightly, barely, but enough for Carmen to notice. You're not made of stone, Danielle. Don't pretend to be. I'm not pretending. Yes, you are. Danielle looked away. I just don't have time to be emotional about this. Carmen leaned forward. That's not strength, that's survival. And you've been surviving for far too long. Danielle said nothing. She simply allowed the words to hang between them. Later that day she met with Isabel in person. They selected a quiet cafe off Highway 90, a place with more tea selections than tables. Isabel appeared younger in person, barely 30, fidgeting with her keys. "Thank you for coming," she said as Danielle sat down. "You're taking a significant risk." Isabel looked around, her voice low. "It's not just about you. This occurs frequently. They have a list. Names, plates. It's not official, but it's real. They don't document anything. They just..." "No," Danielle leaned in. "Why are you telling me?" Isabel swallowed hard. "Because I joined to protect people, not to profile them." Danielle studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Do you have any of that in writing?" "No, that's the thing. It's cultural, taught through jokes, through who receives a warning and who doesn't." Danielle sighed. "That's always the most challenging part to prove. The elements that leave no trace." "I want to testify," Isabel suddenly stated. Danielle blinked. "Are you certain?" "I'm weary and I'm done turning a blind eye." Danielle reached for her notepad. "Then we'll proceed correctly." Back at her office that evening, Danielle reviewed the department's misconduct reports from the past 5 years. Nadia assisted in organizing the files. More than a few complaints seemed eerily familiar. Tag checks, late-night stops, vague justifications, patterns. Danielle leaned back, eyes closed. "Are you okay?" Nadia softly inquired. Danielle opened her eyes. "I'm exhausted, but I'm more determined than ever." "Do you want me to clear your schedule for next week?" Danielle looked at her. "No. I want every meeting to remain. If the city wishes to feign ignorance, then I'll remind them, one courtroom at a time." But before she could present the truth in court, one final piece of evidence would surface. And this time, it wouldn't originate from a whistleblower. It would come from someone who had once been silent. Danielle did not anticipate the call. It arrived from a restricted number on a Friday morning, just as she was arranging her notes for a community justice panel at the FSU Law Center. She almost let it ring unanswered, but something prompted her to pick up. "Miss Rivers," the voice on the other end was deep, hesitant. "This is Chief Ronald Breck. I'd like to speak with you in person." Danielle hesitated. "I don't engage in backroom negotiations, Chief." "This isn't that," he quickly said. "It's just a conversation. No press, no agenda. Just us." She paused again. "All right," she said, "but not in your office. My territory, not yours." He agreed. They met at the Lemoyne Art Center downtown. Neutral ground, quiet, open, and distant from both the courthouse and the precinct. Danielle arrived first, seated near the back courtyard beneath a large oak tree. She wore simple slacks and a navy blouse. No blazer, nothing official, just human. Chief Breck appeared 5 minutes late, shoulders squared, sunglasses tucked into the collar of his shirt. He seemed older than usual, somehow heavier, as if the burden of everything was finally pressing down on him. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sitting across from her. She offered no smile. "I'm here to talk." He nodded. "I've reviewed the footage, all of it. Heard the audio. What transpired should not have occurred." Danielle remained still. "And yet it did." "I know, and I accept responsibility for the department's failure to manage this properly." Danielle leaned forward slightly. "You accept responsibility, or you're uttering those words because they're safer than silence?" The chief exhaled slowly. "I've been performing this job for 26 years. I've witnessed the system from every perspective, but I cannot feign that I foresaw this." "That's the issue," she stated. "You should have." He looked away. "There are decent individuals in the department," he offered. "Not everyone is Denton or Drew." "There are decent individuals everywhere," she replied. "But the culture doesn't emanate from them. It originates from the top, from what you permit to go unchecked." He said nothing for a moment, then quietly, "I want to change it, but I'm unsure where to begin." Danielle blinked once, slowly. "Then you need to step aside and allow someone else to lead." That hit hard. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You're not mincing words." "No," she said, "because I don't have time to instruct grown men on how to treat people with dignity." There was a long pause. "I've already drafted my resignation," Breck stated. Danielle tilted her head. "Voluntary?" He nodded. "Sort of. Let's call it mutual clarity." She studied him, attempting to discern the unspoken meaning. He continued, "But before I depart, I wish to implement something permanent. An internal cultural review board, community civilian oversight, mandatory anti-bias training, Something substantive. Danielle crossed her arms. Those are initial steps, not ultimate solutions. I know. Then don't promise them as if they're sufficient. He nodded again. Would you help shape it? Danielle hesitated. I'm not a consultant. I know that, but people will listen to you. She pondered for a moment, looking up at the branches overhead. A squirrel darted across the bark, vanishing into the leaves. I'll offer input, she said, but I won't dilute the truth. Fair enough. He stood to leave, but she wasn't finished. One more thing, Danielle said. This isn't just about Denton or Drew. This is about every name that never reached the news, every person who lacked a badge or a title. What you're attempting to do won't matter unless it impacts them. Breck swallowed, then offered a small nod. I understand. As he walked away, Danielle sat alone for a while. She felt no triumph, not even relief. She simply felt stillness. Back at the office, Nadia met her at the door. There's something you need to see. Danielle followed her inside. Nadia handed her a printout, an email. It was from Officer Casey Drew. Short, handwritten. Attached was a digital copy of a sworn statement. Danielle read the first line aloud. I, Officer Drew, acknowledge that during the stop on August 1st, my behavior and language were unprofessional and driven by assumptions not grounded in any evidence. He stopped reading. Nadia whispered. He came forward. Danielle sat down, hands resting in her lap. The tension in her chest began to dissipate, though only slightly. But now, with 2 officers exposed and a department leader stepping down, the city had exhausted its justifications, and Danielle had one final declaration to make. The statement from Officer Casey Drew struck the media like a lightning bolt. It was complete, signed, notarized. No denials, no clever phrasing, just accountability. He admitted profiling Danielle, admitted joking about her appearance and car, admitted pulling her over because she didn't resemble someone who should be operating a vehicle like that in that vicinity. Danielle read those words in her office, back straight, hands steady, face devoid of expression. Theo called minutes later. You saw it. She nodded even though he couldn't see her. I did. I haven't witnessed anything like this, perhaps ever. Danielle remained silent. Theo continued. Word is he didn't clear it with his union. Just walked into legal affairs this morning and stated he couldn't live with it anymore. What prompted the change? She asked. Your interview. Isabel coming forward. And Breck resigning. Danielle blinked. So it required an entire cascade of pressure for one man to confess what was already captured on camera? Still, Theo asserted, a crack in the wall is still a crack. That same afternoon, Isabel Marie sent Danielle a follow-up message, subject, You should know this. In the body of the email was a file, a compiled list of all internal complaints filed over the last 4 years within the TPD, publicly redacted but internally archived. Most had been closed without investigation. Danielle opened it. Names, dates, offenses ranging from excessive force to suspicious tag stops. And in over 60% of those cases, the names of the complainants were Black or Latino drivers. The locations of the stops consistently in 3 neighborhoods, Saxon Heights, Old Town and Lakeside. Danielle pushed her chair back and stood. This was no longer just about her. She scheduled a press conference. It was held on the courthouse steps the next morning. No podium, no flashing signs, just a table, a microphone and a manila folder in her hand. Dozens gathered. Local reporters, law students, pastors, organizers and ordinary citizens who had closely followed the story since day one. Some carried handmade signs. One read, If she can't drive home in peace, what hope do I have? Danielle stepped to the microphone. My name is Danielle Rivers. I'm the state attorney and I was pulled over without cause, without explanation and with disrespect. You're already aware of that part. But what you might not know is this was not an isolated incident. She held up the folder. These are internal complaints filed by residents of our community, your neighbors, your friends, your children, who were stopped, searched, or addressed as if they were less than citizens. Over half of these were never pursued, never investigated, buried. She allowed the silence to settle. I've been quiet long enough. The press surged forward with questions, but she did not entertain them. She thanked the crowd, then stepped back and descended the stairs. That footage, just 2 minutes long, made national news headlines by lunchtime. Social media amplified it further. Drivers who had once harbored self-doubt, maybe I was overthinking it, maybe I was speeding, began speaking out. The city council, facing escalating pressure, voted to initiate an independent review of all closed complaints from the past 5 years. The governor issued a public statement urging transparency at all levels of law enforcement. And in an unforeseen development, Officer Drew's statement ignited a debate within the department itself. Younger officers began requesting ethics retraining. A few openly supported Isabel Marie, calling her brave in anonymous interviews. Danielle did not celebrate. She returned to work. She met with prosecutors in her office and reviewed evidence on a pending murder case. She approved 2 diversion program acceptances for first-time nonviolent offenders. And later that night she drove herself home alone in the same Audi. At the stoplight on Magnolia Drive, a patrol car pulled up beside her. She glanced over just briefly. A young black officer behind the wheel offered a slow, small, simple nod, then drove off. That night Carmen called. I saw the press conference. You articulated what needed to be said. Danielle did not speak. Carmen added, and you said it as your father would have, calm, clear but resolute. Danielle faintly smiled. He disliked raised voices, she said. Said truth didn't need to shout. Carmen softly laughed. Lord, that man. Danielle gazed out the window into the darkness, her voice steady. I'm not finished yet. But before she could conclude this chapter, she had one final message, and it was intended for the future, not just for the present. The university auditorium was filled, not the usual attendance for a midweek law panel, but packed to capacity. Students, faculty, alumni, community members, even a few retired judges who hadn't sat on a bench in over a decade. Danielle stood backstage observing the crowd settling. The moderator, Professor Lyle Fenwick, gave her a subtle nod. He was a longtime mentor, gruff but principled, with piercing eyes and a voice that resonated without a microphone. He had been among the first to tell her years ago, you don't have to scream to be heard, you just have to make them listen. When her name was announced, the applause was immediate and substantial. Not wild or celebratory but intentional, respectful. People rose not because she was famous, but because she had championed something when it mattered. She stepped to the lectern in a navy dress, nothing ostentatious. She surveyed the room once, then began, I didn't come here to discuss a traffic stop. The crowd instantly quieted. I came here to discuss what transpires when truth makes people uncomfortable, when justice becomes personal, and when silence becomes a deliberate choice. He let that sink in. I've dedicated my life to interpreting laws, debating facts, building cases. But none of that prepared me for being perceived as suspicious behind the wheel of my own car. None of it prepared me for the doubt, the quiet chuckle, the assumption that I must have been engaged in something illicit, simply because I didn't conform to someone's mental image of safety. She glanced toward the back row. But what I've learned is this. Justice doesn't commence in a courtroom. It doesn't begin with an opening statement or a closing argument. It commences the moment someone in uniform decides who appears right and who doesn't, who receives the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't, who merits a second glance or a second chance. A student raised their phone to record. Danielle did not stop them. Some people suggest I should have just dismissed it, that it wasn't that egregious. But when we overlook minor transgressions, we create space for larger ones. When we normalize disrespect, we institutionalize danger. Her voice did not elevate, but it sharpened. I am not standing here today seeking applause or pity. I am standing here because it is imperative that we name what occurs, that we call things as they are, even when it's unsettling, especially then. She scanned the crowd, taking in faces. Young, old, curious, weary, hopeful. To every young person here studying law, preparing for the bar, dreaming of courtrooms, remember this. Your profession will never solely involve arguing cases. It will involve perceiving people, holding systems accountable, and refusing to allow quiet injustice to pass unnoticed. A beat. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you must ask, why was I stopped? Understand that you deserve an answer, not just because you possess a badge or a degree or a microphone, but because you are a citizen and your dignity is non-negotiable. The audience rose again, not for theatrics but because truth often demands it. Afterward, as people approached her, handshakes, hugs, quiet words of gratitude, Danielle moved through them with serene grace. She did not linger. She wasn't there to be admired. She was there to leave a lasting impact. Outside, the sky was dimming. The parking lot buzzed with voices, flashes from phones, low murmurs of conversation. Danielle walked to her car alone. She unlocked it, opened the door, sat inside for a moment, then pulled out her phone. She opened her notes app and typed one last line before driving off. Justice is not a performance, it's a practice. If this narrative resonated with you, prompted reflection, or brought someone to mind, do not let it conclude here. Subscribe to the channel, share this video, and sustain the dialogue, because stories like Danielle Rivers's are not fiction. They are real and they are not yet finished.